Well, good evening. Also, it is my pleasure to welcome all the participants today for these 2 hours of OCEANID seminar on sea management for sustainable regional development. I welcome all the distinguished speakers and guests from all over Europe and from different walks of life who have come here to share their knowledge and vast experience with the Monnet Share students community. We are proud that this seminar is conducted along with the Portuguese Association for Regional Development, who have consistently ranked as #1 among Portuguese regional studies organizations. And I would like to particularly salute its president, Professor Tomás Bentinho, who has managed to secure a leading role for APDR, both at European and world levels. I would also like to greet the more than 100 students who have attended any of the Monnet Share courses over the past 2.5 years. So as we all know, the world is increasingly moving out to the sea. The seas and oceans are considered driving forces of the economy, revealing a great potential for growth and development. Security threats such as terrorism, piracy, environmental changes, transport of migrants also are linked with the sea. Rising powers who express territorial interests are building up their national capacities to control strategically important areas. China in the South China Seas, Brazil in the South Atlantic, Russia in the Arctic routes, and in other areas of naval importance such as Crimea and Ukraine. These changes in the grand strategies of countries such as China and Russia, from landward to seaward security, led the United States to also adapt its strategic focus accordingly. But in today's international landscape, another actor is also establishing itself, and I'm talking about the European Union. With almost 20 million square kilometers, the European Union, including the outermost regions, has the largest maritime economic zone on the planet and a coastline that is 7 times that of the United States and 4 times that of Russia. Almost half of European citizens live less than 50 kilometers from the shoreline. 40% of European GDP, well, these are known numbers, is generated in maritime regions, and an impressive 80% of the European Union foreign trade is made by sea. The European maritime economy employs around 5.5 million people, generates a gross value added of almost 500 billion euros, and has a high potential for future growth. Europe's security on fish, protein, minerals, or renewable energy, just to mention some, is crucially dependent on ocean resources. The Integrated Maritime Policy, the IMP, as we all know, has established itself as a new approach to adopt the view that by combining sea and ocean policies, Europe could achieve better economic results with less environmental impact. And the IMP growing emphasis on territorial governance and regional cooperation becomes a channel for the dissemination of European political ideas and priorities for sustainable development linked to the oceans. As we also all know, maritime industries and services are intricately linked, and that means that decisions in one area can have adverse effects in other. For example, an offshore power plant could harm maritime transports or fishing, which in turn can have negative effects on seaports, for instance. The IMP covers areas as diverse as fisheries, aquaculture, transports, ports, marine environment, research, offshore energy, shipbuilding, coastal and maritime tourism, maritime surveillance, employment, development of coastal regions, or external oceans relations. And as such, IMP seeks integration over a multitude of different industries, policies, and stakeholders. and this is both its major strength and its major weakness. Its initiatives must consider conflicting interests, divergent actions in different policy areas, and the structural challenges common to multi-level governance systems. The IMP introduced a new governance approach, which assumes an integration of different bodies of knowledge, of sectorial activities and policy domains. While this is a good first step towards an integrated governance model, further challenges must be tackled to ensure a successful implementation outcome. The governance objective of the IMP is to change the way the European Union makes policies and takes decisions. This has not been achieved yet, and the IMP was not able to set up the necessary structural setting to support the institutionalization of integrated horizontal governance. And the proposed voluntary forms of cooperation do not always connect to the interests, expectations, and values of the participants. Will the IMP be able to set up the necessary structural setting to support the institutionalization of IMP governance in the future? Do the proposed forms of cooperation and the results are in accordance with the desired outcomes of the actors involved? Finally, can the integrated maritime surveillance be achieved at EU level? I think these are all questions and topics, among others, to be addressed in the next 2 hours. We expect between 45 minutes and almost an hour for questions and answers. You must ask permission. I have here a message from the staff. You have to ask permission in the chat for putting questions. And so let us start. Let us have an amazing seminar, and thank you so much for your participation. Right away, I give the floor to our first speaker. Sorry, just a second. Which is Reka, I'm trying to say this correctly, Reka Rozsavolgyi, I'm sorry, from the European Commission, DG MARE, and she works in the unit on sea basin strategies, maritime regional cooperation, and maritime security, and quite in line with what we're talking about. A presentation is titled The Atlantic Basin Strategy and the Outermost Regions. I thank you so much, Reka. You have the floor, please.
Thank you very much, Chair, and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I hope that everybody can hear me properly. I'm very glad to be here with you today, this afternoon, and it's an honor for me to be invited on behalf of DG MARE. So thank you very much again for the invitation. Indeed, today I would like to guide you through to a new Atlantic Action Plan, which the European Commission has adopted on the 23rd of July this year. And before going to the content of this new revised Atlantic Action Plan, allow me to introduce the origin and the history of the Atlantic Action Plan and the related Atlantic Maritime Strategy. So the Atlantic Maritime Strategy was born actually already in 2011, so quite a long time ago, in response to repeated calls from stakeholders for a more ambitious, open and effective cooperation in the Atlantic Ocean area. And this strategy identified the challenges and opportunities facing the region. And the strategy as such was later on accompanied by a so-called Atlantic Action Plan, so the first version of the Atlantic Action Plan, which was adopted already in 2013 to implement the strategy, the maritime strategy. And this plan already provided a framework, a rather good framework actually, for a dynamic project development at local, regional and national levels, as advocated also by the Atlantic Maritime Strategy. And The original plan had 4 priorities, as you can see on this slide. These 4 priorities were, of course, fully in line with the strategy as well. And altogether...
Reka, I'm sorry to interrupt you. Can you speak a little bit louder, please? I'm sorry.
Yes, I try. Is it a bit better now?
Yes, thank you.
I'm sorry.
No?
I try my best. So the original action plan has already generated tangible results, namely 1,200 new maritime projects, which were primarily targeting environmental protection, improved connectivity, and social inclusion in the Atlantic area. And important to mention that these projects altogether represented an investment of nearly 6 billion euros, including funding from the EU, the European Investment Bank, and of course, national, regional, and private sources as well. However, and despite these significant achievements, the midterm review that the European Commission has published in 2018 has revealed some weaknesses as well. Some weaknesses of the original action plan, which included the following aspects. The review has identified an absence of a thematic focus as the most critical problem, actually, accompanied by a lack of a solid framework for monitoring and evaluation. And thirdly, a weak governance structure. Now, in order to remedy this situation and to basically overcome the identified shortcomings, the European Commission, jointly with the member states of the Atlantic Strategy, at that time the UK was still part of it, together with the member states, we have initiated 5 national consultation workshops with a view to actually revising and revamping the action plan, and most importantly, to bring a thematic focus into it. And as a result, today we are very happy that after a long process, finally, we managed to adopt actually this revised Atlantic Action Plan this year in July. Now, this action plan, as I mentioned, is a result of a bottom-up exercise, a bottom-up national consultation exercise. So everything that is currently included in this action plan, all the actions, are actually identified by local, regional, and national actors, so the Atlantic stakeholders, so to speak. And Portugal is an active member, of course, of the Atlantic Maritime Strategy. And as chair of the Atlantic Strategy Group last year, herewith, I would like to thank Portugal for their key role and support in the discussions which were actually steering the revision of the action plan last year. The new plan, I'm showing you the next slide, the new Atlantic Action Plan aims to respond to the emerging challenges and opportunities in the blue economy, while contributing to carbon neutrality at the same time. This revamped action plan will also give new impetus to the Atlantic Maritime Strategy and will strengthen the participating countries' recovery efforts further to the COVID-19 crisis. And in line with the European Green Deal, it will also contribute to a socially inclusive, sustainable model of regional development and job creation. And in order to offset the adverse socio-economic impacts of the current crisis, the new action plan proposes very concrete actions. I can hear some echoes, I don't know what's going on. So very concrete actions for the development of the blue economy in the Atlantic, addressing some of the great challenges, such as the reduction of CO2 emissions, the fight against marine pollution, the creation of new jobs, and the adaptation to climate change. So as you can see on the slide, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, perfect. Sorry. So I continue on. As you can see on the slide, the new Atlantic Action Plan has identified 4 new, very focused thematic areas. Number 1 is addressing Atlantic ports. Number 2 is addressing blue skills and ocean literacy. And the third pillar is addressing marine renewable energy. And the fourth one is the environmental dimension of the new action plan, which is aiming at a healthy and resilient Atlantic coast. Basically, it includes also, of course, marine pollution and aspects of the environment in the Atlantic Ocean. And what you can see in the green arrow, research and innovation, is actually a cross-cutting theme, a cross-cutting dimension, which is representing the international dimension of the action plan, which is focusing on research and innovation under the umbrella of the Atlantic Ocean Research Alliance, further to the Galway and Belém statements, which were signed between the EU, the USA, Canada, Brazil, and South Africa. And this action plan now comes also with a strengthened governance structure. And this action plan will be implemented through this reinforced governance mechanism, which will hopefully strengthen regional maritime cooperation among the participating countries and include coastal regions and stakeholders as well. In addition, we have also put in place a solid monitoring framework with key performance indicators in order to measure the action plan's impact and its success later on. And as you can see on the top of the governance structure, there is the so-called Atlantic Strategy Committee. Now, this is the key governing board, so to speak, for the new Atlantic Action Plan. And this includes, of course, the European Commission as well as standing member, but most importantly, the Atlantic 4 member states. So we have Ireland, Spain, Portugal, and France on board in this joint venture. And what is important also as a novelty, as a novel feature, as compared to the past, we have put in place under the governance structure, we have put in place a new element, which is called pillar coordinators. So from now on, our intention is to designate a pillar coordinator who would coordinate the work of each of the thematic pillars, supported by experts. And these experts are actually supported furthermore by a newly introduced Atlantic Assistance Mechanism, which has just started its operation. And it is led by a consortium led by PricewaterhouseCoopers. And one of the other speakers, Miguel, is actually the leader of this project, the Atlantic Assistance Mechanism. So I'm very happy that he is also with us today. Now, as you can see, also I mentioned on this slide a few funding sources. This is important because, as you know, the action plan as such, neither in the past nor in the future, is not accompanied by a dedicated funding scheme, actually. So the European Structural and Investment Funds, including the Future Territorial Cooperation Programme in the Atlantic area, and the European Maritime and Fisheries Funds, are expected to be the main source of funding for all the actions. And in addition to the national and regional funding opportunities, the action plan will also rely on other available EU funding sources, of course, such as Horizon Europe, Connecting Europe Facility, the LIFE program, and other innovative financial instruments which are managed currently by the European Investment Bank, such as the InvestEU program for decarbonization and the circular economy. Now, what is also important to mention is that it is clear that several blue economy sectors in the Atlantic area are expected to suffer from the current crisis, notably coastal and maritime tourism, which is the largest sector of the Atlantic blue economy, generating about 27 billion euros in terms of gross value added and employing about 0.76 million people. Now, the revised Atlantic Action Plan also has the ambition to contribute to shaping the participating countries' recovery efforts towards job creation and growth while safeguarding the environment and securing a healthy ocean. This COVID-19 crisis also gives us at the same time an additional opportunity to put the blue economy on a transformative recovery path. We have here a unique opportunity to reset and start over adopting an approach that is based on sustainable recovery and circularity. And here, our aim is to reconcile economic recovery on the one hand with environmental and social recovery on the other hand, with important co-benefits in terms of climate adaptation and mitigation. And moving forward, we have also started preparing, for your information, a new approach, a new narrative, so to speak, to a sustainable blue economy, as mandated by our president, Ursula von der Leyen, who has mandated our Commissioner for Environment, Ocean and Fisheries with this task. So we are working on this new narrative and hopefully we can propose a new communication as soon as possible, possibly already next year. So now I just wanted to guide you through, without going into details, the concrete actions that have been identified jointly with the Atlantic member states and regional and local actors in order to illustrate how much more concrete this action plan is actually as compared to the previous one. So here we have 4 thematic pillars, and under each of the pillars we have very concrete goals. So for example, we have a goal that is targeting ports as gateways for trade in the Atlantic, and you see the very concrete actions which the action plan actually includes to be implemented. And you can see that we have something very concrete. For example, we want to create a network of green ports by 2025. We also want to develop eco-incentive schemes to upgrade port infrastructure. We want to launch an Atlantic strategy on liquefied natural gas. And all these actions, they don't come from top down from the Commission. These were really identified further to the national stakeholder consultation exercise that took place in the last 2 years. Now, moving forward to our next goal, namely ports as catalysts for business. Here we are also targeting the development of a blue accelerator scheme for the Atlantic ports to help scale up innovative businesses. And here we have already a very concrete example from Portugal, because Portugal has already implemented a blue accelerator program. And based on this example and inspired from this example, we would like to extend the Portuguese experience and to make sure that other Atlantic ports join this initiative, and we can create a network of a blue accelerator scheme across the Atlantic. I don't want to go into the details of each of the actions. It's just to highlight for you a few key actions that we have in the pipeline currently. Moving forward, we have the next important goal in this action plan that is targeting blue skills and ocean literacy. Here, of course, what is important for us is to identify blue skill gaps that still exist, of course, in the EU Atlantic area. That is key in order to further expand emerging technologies and emerging blue economy sectors. We need, of course, the right skill set. This is crucial as an enabling factor. We also want to take advantage of the existing information platforms for job opportunities and harvest their potential for blue jobs. So we have clear ambitions in this field as well. On ocean literacy, for example, a very concrete ambition we have is the creation of 25 Atlantic Blue Schools by 2025. And Blue Schools is also something that Portugal is a champion of. So we have already an example from Portugal, which has already established a Blue School. And this is something that we would like to further expand in the Atlantic. Now, concerning marine renewable energy, of course, the Atlantic is is the right place in Europe where marine renewable energies can be pursued actually. So we have here also very high ambitions in line also with the Strategic Energy and Technology Plan, the so-called SET plan. We would like to strengthen cooperation in the European Ocean Energy Community. We would like to develop a specific ocean energy framework for EU islands in the Atlantic as well. And this is important also for outermost regions, of course, which are islands such as Azores, where this conference is taking place. And moving further now, our sixth goal is to create a stronger coastal resilience at the Atlantic. Of course, we are all aware that the Atlantic coast is prone to storms and coastal erosion. This is a very important challenge currently at the Atlantic coast. Therefore, we would like to develop test spaces, pilot areas to test methods of coastal protection and promote nature-based solutions. And also we would like to create information campaigns for Atlantic coastal communities and educating young people and coastal communities on the evolution of the coastline and ways to adapt to sea level rise as well. We would also like to map coastal wetlands for preservation and to monitor their role as carbon sinks. And finally, of course, we would like to fight against marine pollution. This is a key topic, not just at the Atlantic Ocean, but across the board in all our oceans in the world. We would like to engage under OSPAR, for example, to implement collective actions of the Marine Litter Regional Action Plan. We would also like to support the work under the Union Civil Protection Mechanism and the Bonn and Lisbon agreements towards effective prevention, preparedness, and response to deliberate and accidental pollution as well. We would like to promote cooperation among sectors for a coordinated at-sea and shoreline response. We would like to develop a pilot project also of a litter-free coastal community. So as you can see, we have identified a number of very concrete initiatives that need to be implemented in the future. And finally, last but not least, since this conference is taking place in the Azores, which is one of the 9 EU outermost regions, allow me to mention a few words about blue economy development in outermost regions, which is a key topic of interest for DG MARE as well. We are very actively engaged in a process whereby we try to facilitate outermost regions' efforts to develop blue economy strategies. And in this context, we are convinced that the approach towards blue economy development needs to be strategic, integrating traditional sectors such as fisheries, tourism, with more advanced areas, emerging technologies such as marine renewable energies or blue biotechnology, for example, in order to transform outermost regions into real laboratories of excellence. And it is in this perspective that we made a call 3 years ago to all outermost regions to develop their own blue economy strategies. We invited outermost regions to do this exercise, to think strategically how to best support and foster innovation in traditional blue economy sectors, while at the same time exploring emerging ones with a big growth and job potential. And I would like to congratulate the Azores for the significant progress made in developing a blue economy strategy so far, which is no doubt a very challenging exercise. And we welcome and support your efforts, and this is why we presented a methodological guidance document to all outermost regional representatives in a webinar that we organized back in June this year. And our intention is to publish this document very soon, still in September. So it will be available online. And finally, let me emphasize that the EU's vision is to ensure healthy, safe, secure, and sustainable oceans. There's no magic bullet to kickstart an economic boom in the Azores or elsewhere in the world, but our experience shows that if the EU, the member states, the regions, and business and academia come together and work with the same goals in mind, progress can be made. So now back to the Atlantic Action Plan. I just wanted to highlight to you what are the key next steps, where we stand currently. So now the communication on the new Atlantic Action Plan has been adopted. Our next big step is to identify and to select the 4 thematic pillar coordinators, and then to establish 4 national hubs as well to support the implementation of the action plan. We are working also intensively on trying to align the EU funding programs, so those which are funded by the European Regional Development Funds, the so-called mainstream operational programs, but also the future Interreg Atlantic Area program. We want to align these programs with the new Atlantic Action Plan priorities, and the current French presidency that is presiding over the Atlantic Strategy Committee currently is organizing an Atlantic Stakeholder Forum, an annual event in Bordeaux this year on the 19th of November, and I would like to kindly invite you all to register and to participate in this interesting event, which of course will primarily focus on the themes that are identified under the new Atlantic Action Plan. We don't know yet if it will be a physical or a partly physical, partly virtual event or fully virtual event. This I cannot tell you yet, but the event in any case will take place for sure. This I can tell you already. So thank you very much for your attention, and I'm happy to hear your views or any questions that you may have. I'm at your disposal. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Reka. We will have all the presentations in a row, and we'll have about 3/4 of an hour for discussion and questions. So thank you so much for such an interesting and detailed presentation. And without further ado, I give the floor to our next speaker, which is Dr. Peter Hefferman, which is Ocean Ambassador. He's also member of the Horizon EU Mission on Health, Oceans, Seas, Coastal and Inland Waters, and also member of the Strategic Advisory Boards on Earth and Environment of the Helmholtz Association. Thank you so much, Dr. Peter Hefferman.
Thank you, Regina, and I hope you can see my screen okay?
Yes, no problem.
That's great. Delighted to be with you on Bom Dia. I wish I was with you in person in the beautiful Azores, coming from an island nation in the Atlantic. It was one of my great wishes this year to visit the Azores. The possibility would have been there to do it twice, but COVID-19 has imposed restrictions on us all, which my dear wish is that everyone keeps well and safe. Very interesting listening to Reka and to say that in advance of giving you the story of the journey of the voyage so far with Mission Ocean, I can see great alignment with the opportunities identified in the Atlantic Action Plan with what will be necessary and what is envisaged in the Mission Ocean work. And also to emphasize that having been involved a decade ago in the creation of the first integrated government plan for Ireland and all things ocean, an entire whole of government initiative with the Prime Minister. Integrated plans, number one, are absolutely essential for success, be it in the economy or in nature, in conservation, or in dealing with climate. But integrated plans, when done well and pursued in a joined up way, can pay very large dividends. And I would cite the example of Ireland doubling the size of the blue economy within a decade. Okay, so on to the journey for the mission board. We are captained on this voyage by the distinguished Monsieur Pascal Lamy, and it is wonderful to work with such an experienced leader.
Sorry, Peter, I'm sorry. Can you put your PowerPoint on a large scale, please?
Okay, let me see if
full screen.
Is that?
Yeah, it's better. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because it's in.
Thank you. And like all journeys towards getting a joined up action plan and a deep integrated approach, we must deal with the complexity of the ocean and water system on the planet. And I think it is very often out of sight and out of mind. Few realize in reality that all the aquatic reservoir really for this planet, with nearly over 97% of all of the aquatic resources, are in the ocean. And all water is on a journey back to the sea, but it is on a journey back to the sea through all of the land on which humankind live. So there is a very deep and intimate and complex system which has to be dealt with. And fundamentally, to understand where we're coming from with the vision we have for the mission, this is a key point. There is complexity, and also there's a great challenge that the ocean is very often, and the water resources are very often, out of sight and out of mind. And that lack of an emotional and empathetic connection in society is a very real challenge if we are to achieve what is necessary for society and the safety of human life on this planet with the challenges faced. So in standing up to the challenge of creating a mission that would gain the support of the Commission and the Council of Europe and the European Parliament, we set a very exacting suite of guiding principles which any mission must stand up to as listed there. And we were very challenging of ourselves in how we independently and then collectively worked at how to meet the challenges from those guiding principles. And working through all of that complexity, we've settled on 4 huge areas of challenge that you, Regina, outlined in your opening, that are faced by mankind with the ocean and all our water resources. Climate change is an existential challenge, but the ocean and the interplay between the ocean and the atmosphere are fundamental to understanding climate change and to tracking its impacts, and indeed dealing with the mitigation and the necessary actions to prevent the worst case scenario, which is the trajectory we are on at the moment. Reka's presentation has outlined efforts to address improved governance in Europe, but we feel there is another order of magnitude in the attention, focus, both political and administrative, that can be and should be achieved at a European, at a national, and at a regional, and indeed a global level to address the scale of the challenge. There is an unsustainable human footprint. There are many great benefits that come from our relationship with the ocean and the ocean economy and the blue economy, but we are leaving unsustainable human footprints at the moment, and we must change that. And then the 4th area of great challenge I've mentioned is there is a lack of understanding and a human connection with the ocean, and indeed a great gap in the scale of science knowledge that is necessary to address the ocean challenges. And these are just examples of the types of areas of human endeavor that interact both positively and potentially negatively with the ocean and atmosphere. So moving along, we've settled on 5 key areas that are all interconnected, where the mission should focus and the efforts it's seeking to achieve. And we've adopted the starfish as our emblem for the moment to amplify the key areas for action. Filling the knowledge and emotional gap, regenerating water and marine ecosystems, zero pollution, revamping governance, and decarbonizing our oceans, seas and waters and the industries associated with them are the 5 key theme areas. The title we have chosen as a working title for the mission is Mission Starfish 2030, Know, Restore and Protect Our Ocean and Waters. Now we are open and invite ideas on improving this title and making it even more appealing and understandable. And I'll show a website link at the end of my presentation where your feedback on the title and any area being considered and proposed in the themes and actions are most welcome. There, as I say, are the 5 high-level key topic theme areas: filling the knowledge and emotional gap, regenerating marine and water ecosystems, zero pollution, decarbonizing our oceans and waters, and revamping governance. And I've listed the key target, 17 targets in total that have been identified. And behind each of these targets, there are outcomes that we seek to achieve by 2025 and by 2030, all listed at the moment. And behind each of those are a suite of supporting actions that are recognized will be required to deliver on these. And if I could take just one area as an example to amplify that, in the area of filling the knowledge and emotional gap, for each European to, if you like, feel an empathy and a connection and be a citizen with the ocean, the supporting actions are very wide sweeping and a scale of education, on the scale of citizen science, with the blue workforce, huge initiatives on upskilling, on active cooperation and co-ownership, and in the area of arts, culture and heritage, to amplify and to really enable the European citizens to connect with the ocean. And in the areas of filling knowledge gaps, we are seeking to have 2 major achievements. One, all of Europe's waters, seafloor to be mapped by 2030, with a full Atlantic Ocean map by 2025, to create a fit for purpose forecasting digital system comparable to what we take for granted from satellites and from weather forecasting today, to project and forecast all the key societally critical parameters about the ocean at a transformational level within a decade. This is the scale of the ambition that the mission is seeking to deliver on. Citizen engagement is considered a very, very important and critical area, and one which has been taken very, very seriously at the Commission level. And there will be initiatives in, I would imagine, all coastal and inland European countries before this process is completed. We will be reporting on a next draft to the Commission at the end of September, after the European Research and Innovation Days. But 2 pilots have been run already for citizen engagement. I was honored to be involved in Ireland's initiative in August, where we had a citizen seminar with over 50 participants. We had a national survey with over 1,000 responses received, with a major social media campaign, which had a online reach of over 33,000, over almost 3,000 people engaging with the online systems, and broadcast and national media reaches into the millions. So this is the scale of endeavor to try and heighten public awareness. And we accept going forward that the greatest ever communication endeavor associated with the oceans and water will be required for the mission to succeed. There's a rollout of citizen engagement events happening right throughout Europe. Research and Innovation Days in September. There is a Portuguese stakeholder event which I will be participating in. I believe it is October 2 online. And we will be reporting on and taking very, very seriously the nature of the feedback we hear from the citizens. And I will leave you with the website as promised, where You are all invited to reflect and come up with a better title from your own suggestions or any feedback on the mission material, all of which is available at this website. Regina, thank you for that.
Thank you, Peter. Sorry. Thank you so much, Peter. Was most interesting, fascinating indeed. So we can go on for our next speaker, which is Natacha Carvalho, Dr. Natacha Carvalho. She works at the European Commission at the Joint Research Center, more exactly at Water and Marine Resource Units. And the title of her presentation is Potential for Blue Growth in the EU Fisheries and Aquaculture Sectors. Thank you so much, Natacha. I should add that Natacha is Azores born citizen, so she's in Italy, but at the same time she's at home in the Azores. Thank you, Natacha.
Okay, thank you, Regina. A good afternoon to everybody. Just one small correction. I'm not Azorean born. I just lived there for about 14 years. Yeah, but anyway, yeah, so I'm very happy to be here today, even though from the home office, I would much prefer to be there in person. And my talk today is on the potential of the blue growth in EU fisheries and aquaculture sectors. Okay, can you see my screen? Oh, share. Can you see the screen?
You can see, yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so this work is done together with my colleague Jordi Gillian at the Joint Research Center in Italy. So, well, the JRC, what do we do? Really, it's we are the Science and Knowledge Center of the European Commission. Our mission is to support EU policies through independent evidence throughout the whole policy cycle. At the Water and Marine Source Unit, we know that sound scientific knowledge and data are essential to provide support to the common fisheries policy. For this, we undertake annually 5 EU-wide data calls on behalf of DG MARE to collect biological, transversal, and economic data on fisheries. In the economics team, we provide socioeconomic analysis on the EU fisheries sector, including the capture fisheries, aquaculture, and fish processing. And we also analyze the bio and blue economy. We also actively support the Scientific, Technical, and Economic Committee for Fisheries, advise and publish the reports. And together with DG MARE, which is our main partner DG, we carry out sectorial analysis on the blue economy to identify opportunities, challenges, synergies, and competition between the blue sectors. Okay, so, well, we know that seas and oceans are drivers of the EU economy, and they have great potential for innovation and growth. Blue growth is the EU's long-term strategy to support sustainable development in the marine and maritime sectors as a whole. It is the maritime contribution to achieving the goals of Europe 2020 strategy for smart, sustainable, and inclusive growth. It goes hand in hand with green growth, which fosters economic development while also ensuring that our natural assets continue to provide the resources and environmental services on which the well-being of this and future generations rely on. The strategy identifies 5 sectors with high potential for sustainable growth and jobs, and these are aquaculture, maritime and coastal tourism, marine biotechnology, blue renewable energy, and marine mineral resources. Other sectors that are growing in importance, largely due to our changing circumstances, include desalination, coastal protection, maritime security and surveillance, and environmental monitoring. However, it is the established blue sectors, such as port activities, shipbuilding and repair, maritime transport, and coastal tourism that continue to be the main pillar of blue economy jobs and value. So, earlier this year, the European Commission published the 3rd edition of the annual Blue Economy Report. And the report continues to analyze the scope and size of the blue economy in the EU and addresses for the first time in the environmental dimension. It looks into the economic value of several ecosystem services provided by the ocean, including habitats for marine life, carbon sequestration, and processes that influence climate change and biodiversity. Ultimately, the report aims at providing support to policymakers and stakeholders for sustainable development of oceans and coastal resources, and to develop and implement policies and initiatives under the European Green Deal. The Blue Economy Report is a joint collaboration with the Commission's Maritime Affairs and Fisheries DG and the Joint Research Centre. An interactive, user-friendly dashboard is also available online and complements the findings of the report. So, as we've already heard today, the blue economy, with a turnover of 750 billion in 2018, is considered to be in good shape and is growing, in particular through the emerging sectors. With 5 million people employed in 2018, the number of blue jobs in the established sectors has increased by almost 12% from the previous year, so from 2017. And this was mainly driven by coastal tourism. The blue economy emerging and innovative sectors also offer huge potential, especially in the renewable energies, where the EU leads, hosting almost 90% of the global offshore wind and 70% of ocean energy installed capacity in its waters. Jobs in the offshore wind energy sector have multiplied 9-fold in less than 10 years. The maritime defense sector accounts for over 177,000 jobs, and within blue economy, within the bioeconomy, algae production has generated over 350 million. So these sectors offer great potential. Desalination continues to also be a key sector for those countries that are more likely to suffer from water shortages, and not least as a result of climate change. The results also show that the EU blue economy has overcome the impact of the economic and financial crisis of 2018, surpassing most of the values. And although the sectors such as coastal and marine tourism, fisheries, and aquaculture have been severely affected by the coronavirus pandemic, the blue economy as a whole represents a huge potential in terms of its contribution to a green recovery. So the 5 largest member state economies in the EU 28, we're including the UK still at this point, are the largest contributors to the EU blue economy, both in terms of employment and GVA. Together, these 5 member states contribute with 58% of the blue jobs and 69% of the profits. Other countries with significant contributions include Greece, Portugal, the Netherlands, and Denmark, mostly in terms of renewable energies. In 2018, the contribution of the established blue economy sectors to the overall EU economy was estimated at 2.2% in terms of job and 1.5% in terms of GVA. However, these values are quite misleading, as they only include the direct contribution of the established sectors. So the importance of the blue economy as a whole is much greater, especially when considering the induced and indirect effects and also of the emerging sectors. So within the blue economy, the marine living resources comprises 3 subsectors, according to the report. So it's the primary sector, which includes capture fisheries and aquaculture, the fish processing, and the distribution of fish products. Overall, the sector contributed to 11.5% of the blue economy jobs and almost 10% of the blue GVA. Its performance has improved over the years and is better off than it was in 2009. Spain leads the sector with about 20% of the jobs and 17% of the GVA, followed by France, Italy, and the UK. Within the sector, fisheries and aquaculture contribute to 10% of the jobs, but 38% of the GVA. So a significant increase there. According to the latest statistics by the FAO, global fish production reached 179 million tons in 2018, with a first sale value estimated at around 340 billion. From this, 82 million tons valued at 212 billion came from aquaculture production. Based on FAO's assessment, the fraction of fish stocks that are within biological sustainable levels has decreased from 90% in 1974 to 66% in 2017. But in terms of landings value, almost 79% of the current landings come from biological sustainable stocks. So this is good news. In 2018, 88% of global fish production was used for direct human consumption, an increase from 67% in the 1960s. This is equivalent to an annual supply of around 20.5 kilos per capita, up from 9 in 1961. The remaining 22 million tons were destined for non-food uses, mainly to produce fish meal and fish oil. Overall, aquaculture accounted for 46% of the total production and 52% for fish for human consumption. So whereas there has been a huge increase in aquaculture production globally from the 90s onwards, overall EU output has been more or less constant since 2000 and has stagnated around 1.2 million tons and accounts for only about 70% of the overall seafood production. The main EU producers are Spain, France, the UK, Italy, and Greece, which together account for 74% of total production in 2017. Production of mussels, oysters, clams dominates in Spain and France and Italy as well, while the UK produces mainly salmon and Greece sea bass and sea bream. The EU produces, so they primarily focus on 4 species, and production has stagnated at around 1 million tons over the last decades, but its value has increased, reaching almost, about 5.6 billion in 2017. The EU is known and respected for its high quality products, its stringent sustainability measures, and good consumer protection standards. Considering the increasing demand of seafood products in the EU and globally, it seems realistic to expect some growth in the EU aquaculture sector in the near future. Some of the main reasons for stagnation in EU aquaculture production is mainly attributed to strict environmental regulation and bureaucratic burdens. So, but also more recently, there has been a huge drop in mussel production caused mainly by environmental factors such as diseases and algae blooms. The value of production has increased due to the increased production of higher value species such as salmon and sea bass. And these species offer farmers a higher degree of control in the production cycle, such as feeding, medicines, and broodstock. Some productions are quite cyclical, such as sea bream and bass, and are mainly based on supply and demand adjustments. The offshore and closed system productions are still very costly and not yet able to compete with the low imports prices. And in most countries where we've seen significant increase in production, this is largely due to lower trophic level species. So is the EU ready for this? We're not sure, especially considering that already there's quite a low consumer acceptance of aquaculture products in the EU. So to try and boost the sector in the EU, there's been several important public funding investments over the years, aiming to make the sector more successful and competitive. Public funding amounted to around 570 million during the first financial period from 2000 to 2006, increased to 600 million during the next 6-year phase, and increasing to 1.7 billion in this last period. So this translates into an increase of around from around 2.5% of the production value to 6.3% of the production value, just in investments. So in the multinational strategic plans for the promotion of sustainable development of aquaculture, member states estimated 26 production increase by 2020. However, this is still yet to be determined, and it seems quite unlikely given the current constraints, but hopefully you'll see these increases in the near future. So the long-term trend in global capture fisheries has been relatively stable since the 1980s, with catches gradually fluctuating between 86 and 93 million tons per year. In 2018, total global capture fisheries reached the highest level ever reported. So this year it reached 96.4 million tons, but this increase was mostly driven by catches of anchoveta by Peru and Chile, which fluctuates significantly from year to year depending on El Niño and other conditions. So, so in the EU, production has decreased since the early 90s, reaching a low in 2012, but has since seemed to recover and level off at around 5.3 million tons over the last few years. In value terms, capture fisheries has increased and is standing at around 8 billion euros and has the capacity to increase further. Profits have risen over the last few years, in part due to better status of fish stocks and increased fishing opportunities, in particular in the Northeast Atlantic, together with higher average market prices and reduced operating costs such as fuel, which is one of the main constraints of the EU fishing fleet. So the economic performance is expected to continue to improve as fish stocks recover and fleet capacity continues to adapt. However, these benefits have not yet been achieved in the Mediterranean Sea, where most fisheries have not yet moved towards sustainable fishing conditions. And we see there's a clear link between the number of improved or the improved status of fish stocks and higher profits. Several studies have shown that the sustainable and effective management pays off. So in the short term, there is a short-term pain of reducing effort and catches while conserving stocks will be offset by long-term profits gains from higher catches. In other words, bigger stocks mean bigger profits. And the sooner the measures are taken, the quicker is the recovery. However, there are high trade-offs in terms of jobs and effort. So looking into the Portuguese fisheries now, in 2018, the national fleet numbered around almost 7,900 vessels. There were 48 new vessels entered the fleet, while 103 ceased activity. The fleet is profitable and average annual wage per FTE reached a maximum of over 17,100 euros in 2018. This was an increase of 2.6% compared to 2018. The data fleet numbered 87 active vessels only, and in the Azores, there were 533 active vessels in 2018. The performance of these regional fleets has generally improved over the years, and in particular the Azores, you can see, but they all show very healthy above average profit margins. So, however, this year, the sector has been hit by an unexpected external shock. The outbreak of the coronavirus in February, March has impacted the fleet, and all economic sectors are feeling this effect of the crisis, but the fisheries and aquaculture were among the sectors that were immediately impacted. The demand for seafood saw a sudden decrease as retailers, restaurants, canteens, and other large-scale buyers reduced or temporarily closed activities. The Commission took action early on to try to mitigate the situation, a situation that puts the livelihoods of thousands at stake, as well as the stable supply of healthy seafood to EU citizens. Nonetheless, the impact is expected to be hard-felt, even more severe probably than the financial crisis of 2008. And the GDP in the euro area is expected to drop between 8 and 11% in 2020, and jobs by around 2.9%. In Portugal, which is one of the member states that has been hardest hit by this crisis, the GDP is expected to drop by almost 14%. Preliminary results, these are very preliminary, that we are currently undertaking now, suggest that the impact will be even greater in the fishery sector, and GDP will drop around 12% over the EU fleet in general, slightly less for the Portuguese mainland fleet, but more pronounced in the Azores and Madeira. The main reason for this is the significant decrease in efforts. And on the one hand, it is related to health and safety reasons, because it is virtually impossible to social distance on most fishing vessels. And on the other hand, due to market and the significant decrease in demand. In Portugal, one of the major fleet segments affected most by the epidemic was the demersal fleet targeting crustaceans. This fleet operates mainly in the Algarve, and the main markets are Portugal and Spain for fresh consumption. Prices for all species dropped at the onset of the pandemic, and the fleet ceased activity in mid-March. A few vessels resumed activity at the end of March, but the majority only in May. These graphs show that the price variation and the accumulated landings value for the three most important target species during the first half of 2019 and 2020. As one can see, the revenues in 2020 will be significantly affected by the drop in prices due to the low demand and the cessation of activity. Another fleet that was heavily affected is the purse-seiners, which target small pelagics. Most of the fleet only restarted activity in June. The graphs show that the landings value of most important pelagic species, which are anchovy, chub mackerel, and sardine, that the trend is similar to previous years. However, the landed value, the difference between the value is very substantial in 2020 compared to 2019. So to mitigate some of these the economic impact, Portugal implemented 3 measures for temporary cessation of activity. This is limited to 60 days per vessel, and the maximum financial package is expected to be around 7 million euros of public aid. 75% comes from the EMFF and 25% from national funds. So to conclude, fisheries and aquaculture, they are strategic sectors for food and nutrition security, but also for other economic sectors, such as processing, marketing, restaurants, tourism, manufacturing. And their contribution to the blue economy goes way beyond the direct jobs and profits generated. Despite the significant investment and supports, the EU aquaculture sector has not taken off. Indeed, EU production has stagnated, while global production has increased more than 150%. EU production is, however, expected to increase with the latest investments made under the strategic plan for promotion of sustainable aquaculture. Both sectors face an uncertain future, not just related to COVID-19, but also other pressing issues related to climate change and Brexit. But they also have a sea of opportunities. For these activities, though, to thrive in the future, conservation and sustainability are key. Resilient and productive ecosystems allow for healthy fish stocks, and that leads to increased long-term catches and greater industry profits and jobs creation. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Natacha, for your most thorough and informative presentation, which I think it shows quite well that the maritime related activities have a huge dynamics, and that calls for fast and proactive policies and also managerial decisions. So thank you so much. It was most interesting. Before I give the floor to the next speaker, I would like to ask if to remember that you can put questions through the chat, and we'll try to organize if there are similar questions in order for at the end, in order that the speakers can answer and we can have some discussion. So our next speaker is Miguel Marques, which is director of the PwC Blue Economy Center of Excellence, and its presentation is entitled "An Integrated Approach to the Economy of the Sea," which is, so we are in line with the previous presentation. Thank you so much, Miguel. You have the floor. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Regina. Are you hearing me well? Okay, thank you so much for the invitation, and congratulations to the organizers of this fantastic event. And also, it is a pleasure and an honor for me to be here as a speaker together with such experts like Reka, Peter, Natacha, and José, Bastos, Saldanha, and you, Regina. And also, it's a pleasure to be here in the Azores to speak about the ocean. I will try to put my presentation. So I will try to express in these 15 minutes some of our experience on the blue economy, on the economy of the sea we are working on this field for more than 10 years, and we have produced more than 100 reports, most of them about the Atlantic. We have already studied in detail Portugal, of course, we are based here. Not only the continental part, but also the islands, the archipelagos of Azores and Madeira, where every year we are there to present our analysis about the Azores and about Madeira, but also Spain and the Canary Islands and Galicia region, Ireland, where I met Peter and where we collaborate a lot. And also the UK, and at the moment we are also looking very much what is going on the Atlantic part of Canada, the US, and also Brazil, Mexico, and the African part of the Atlantic. We strongly believe that the blue economy is the way to go forward, because it is the most sustainable approach to the development on oceans. And we also congratulate the European Union because it is worldwide, it is leading this blue economy issue and the sustainable approach. And it's interesting that we, as PwC, also start to produce this report more or less the same time as the European Union Maritime Integrated Strategy was born. And we believe that in a world that is more and more urbanized, where we can feel the strengths of the climate change, where the technological breakthroughs are allowing mankind to reach deeper on the ocean and with more impact, and with the demographics of the increasing population and also increasing middle class worldwide, which causes some pressure on the demand for resources, and also the shift of the global economic power, where the Asian countries put in a leadership position in terms of the use and the exploration of that resources. So all these more than 100 reports produces, we can synthesize part of it on this chart, where we can see the huge jump that in 2 decades, 20 years, all the industries of the sea, or the main industries of the blue economy, gave a huge leap. So we see what was aquaculture production in tons in 1998, and if we look what is in 2016 aquaculture, more than multiplied by 4 this production. But the same happens with cruises, for instance, or we can see also a huge jump on trading, and even fisheries maintained stable, did not decline at the world level. If we can see that more and more mankind uses the oceans, unfortunately, this use of the oceans is done by a small club of countries or regions. If we look to what is happening on shipbuilding, for instance, we can see that only 3 countries represent about 80% of the production of the shipbuilding when we consider tons in the analysis. When we look, for instance, for renewable offshore or wind renewable offshore energy, we can see that about 2 countries represent 60% of total installment of capacity. If we look to the vessel demolition, 4 countries in Asia represent about 90% of the vessel demolition. If we look to cruise passengers, more than half of this industry is based in between the Mediterranean and the Caribbean. And when we look to aquaculture, we see, and if we consider tons of production in terms of fisheries or algae, if we sum up everything in terms of tons, we found that Asia represents more than 2/3 of worldwide aquaculture. If we compile all this data in in the world map, in Mapa Mundi, we can see the dynamics of this huge leap of the blue economy, but much concentrated on Asia, a bit in Europe, and not many in terms of Africa and South America. And when we look to the different industries, we see that Asia leads the shipping and ports and shipbuilding industry together with the seafood industry. And then we have some leadership of Europe as a whole in terms of what is tourism, energy a bit, and the three big countries in terms of defense, which are Russia, China, and the US. And unfortunately, because of such a huge intensity of use of oceans in Asia, we see that the shores of Asia that start on India till the northern part of China have the most problems in terms of coastal pollution. And we also can see on this map the problems of the plastic islands that are all over the oceans with more impact in Pacific. And unfortunately, along the equator, we can see a lot of maritime piracy, which is not understandable to be in the 21st century and still speak about piracy in the world. I know that with the cyber problems, there are also the cyber pirates, but no, these ones are really pirates in the real world. Some other data, I could stay for 2 hours speaking about data, so I only will tackle some aspects to try to complement also what was said brilliantly by the other presenters. Just to say that normally we tend to associate the size of the ZEE to the size of the opportunity on the ocean. It is normal that if there is more ocean to be explored or used, probably we have more opportunities. However, when we look to the countries that at the moment are taking the most benefit from this opportunity, it's not direct that we can associate the size of their oceans to the size of their blue economy. And the typical example is China, which is not on the top 25 of the biggest countries in terms of the exclusive economic zones. But I would say that in the most of the industries of the economy of the sea, China ranks in the top 3 for sure. Then a little bit of data about how the world changed in terms of the shift from the west to the east. We can see Asia in 2006, in 2006, that represented about 48% of the maritime trading dynamics, and at the moment represents more than 60%. So in such 10 years, an increase of about 10% is a lot. And that increase of Asia was done on the reduction of the relevance of Europe and the Americas. In terms of energy, just to put in parallel the traditional energy of oil offshore that everyone knows that is facing a lot of problems because of not being sustainable, and also because of the decrease of oil price. But the top 3 countries here are the Saudis, Qatar, Norway, Iran, and Brazil. And when we look to the new emerging energies, like the renewable offshore energy, we see other names like the United Kingdom, Germany, Denmark, the Netherlands, and of course China, that in the past 5 years progressed a lot. It was not on top 5, and at the moment is already reaching Germany, and it will soon become the leader country in terms of this kind of energy. Then just to emphasize again how the world invested a lot on aircraft carriers, frigates, destroyers, corvettes, and submarines. You can see China with more than 200 of these big machines of war. The US about 200, Russia 106, and the other countries. But unfortunately, as I said, we still have in the past decade about more than 500 pirate attacks in Indonesia, more than 200 in Somalia, more than 200 in Nigeria, about 100 in Malaysia, and 90 in Bangladesh. But what worries us is how this issue is progressing in the Atlantic and nearby Europe. Is not far from Europe, the Gulf of Guinea, and we can see with this gray chart on your right side, from 2011 to 2018, we see a huge growth of the pirate attacks in Nigeria that reached in 2018 the level of about 50 pirate attacks. And these are only the ones that were reported, because the small talk says that not only pirate attacks are reported. Another topic, more happy one, is about the future and how IT and communications are fundamental, how internet is fundamental. And the internet was not what it is now if it weren't for the ocean, if it wasn't for the submarine cables. And we can see here the biggest countries in terms of connections of submarine cables. We see Portugal ranks very well here, but there are other important European Union countries like Spain and other countries on this very relevant list. And this is one of the industries that we foresee that will grow more. And we tend to say that at the moment, the most valuable cargo that crosses the oceans is the IT data, is no longer anymore the physical goods. And we should take good care of this, because there is the need of upgrade data ports. So data needs ports as real goods need ports. And at the moment, this is an industry very concentrated in some companies and some territories. And we tend to say that is not yet very well organized. Maybe there is the need of a revolution on this industry, like the revolution that happened when the container started to be used on the real shipping. So we need this kind of revolution to turn more effective and efficient this kind of industry, because as you know, with the pandemic, everyone needs to be linking the rich and the poor, and it's fundamental that we can take education to all homes disregarding the pandemic restrictions. And that means to lower the price of communication, which means to develop very fast the submarine cable industry and other things that are relevant to this industry, of course. Biotechnology also is a fantastic new industry that can really change the paradigm of seafood, in which relates to fish feed for aquaculture and other realities that are very, very relevant, and also about healthcare, cosmetic, and other important industries very lucrative, but we don't see yet on the figures of the blue economy the appropriation of that opportunity, which means that there is here room for improvement to grow blue economy figures, not only because of any statistical account, but really an economic add value of more use or evolution of this industry. And to conclude, just to talk a little bit about the numbers that the previous presenter already did, but in a glance, to say that the blue economy is very important for the GDP of the European Union. It has strong values and employs a lot of people. And as we can see, it is rather dependent on coastal tourism, which represents about half of all this blue economy. And if blue economy means an integrated approach, is not good that one or two industries represent about 50% of the overall. So if it is to be integrated, at least an expectation is that there is not one single industry that represents a lot. So, and the idea shouldn't be reduce tourism, but improve in terms of add value the other industries. And we truly believe that it is impossible to grow GDP on the other industries without being too much aggressive on resources. We defend totally all the Green Deal and other relevant movements towards sustainability, but GDP is an account. It's a number of value multiplied by a quantity. It is important that we reduce quantity and be able to increase the value. And in that multiplication, we should focus on two aligned strategies: preserve the environment and at the same time create value that creates jobs. And the key for that are on the previous industries that we are talking about, like the biotechnology, like the submarine cables, like the IT, and like a new seafood production that is able to fulfill the necessities of mankind without impair future generations. To conclude, just to say, we are in the middle of Atlantic, at least the people that are present physically in this conference, in the beautiful island of Terceira. As the European Union says, the Atlantic part of European Union, in terms of the weight of its blue economy, is rates the most in terms of GDP, of gross value added. It is the sea basin most relevant. So we are talking about a very important region in terms of ocean of the European Union and also of the world. So all the good strategies that are implemented on this region have an impact not only on the region, but in overall European Union and overall world. So thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you so much, Miguel, for your fascinating presentation about blue economy in the world and in Europe. As everybody knows, LAM is a reference in what blue economy and information and innovation is concerned. So it's very, very interesting. Now we are approaching the end of the presentations, and I'll give the floor to Admiral Bastos Saldanha, who is the president of the Ocean Geography section of Geographical Society in Lisbon, who is going to address a presentation entitled Sustainable Development and Sustainability, where are we? Without being, without trying to push you or to press you, but we are a little short of time, so we wanted to have a period for questions, and I'll give you the floor right away. Sorry.
Thank you for your kindness. Would you mind to give me an advice on 10 minutes, please?
That's great. That's great. That's exactly what I
Did you
want.
receive my PDF on the?
Yes. Yes, I have received.
Is it possible to project it?
No, we don't have that system. No, sorry.
No.
But you can speak without PowerPoint.
Okay, let's go.
But we have it. We will distribute it afterwards.
Okay. Good afternoon for everyone. The first words are for the sponsors and organizers in terms of excellence, opportunity, and resilience, in particular to the chair, Professor Tomás Gentinho. Allow me to thank the pleasure of participation to my fellow Regina Salvador and to share it with the panel's colleagues and the audience. Let us keep our attention on terms sustainable and sustainable development and the other specified in general themes and presentations like sustainable development goals and sustainability. Nowadays, most of them are unfortunately of common use without taking care of their specific meaning and creating an illusion about something easily attainable. In accordance with the World Commission on Environment and Development 1987, sustainable development is a global concept giving overriding priority to the satisfaction of human needs, in particular the global poor, while respecting environmental limits, and the International Union for the Conservation of Nature 1991 defined it as the capacity to maintain a certain process or state for improving the quality of human life while living within the carrying capacity of supporting ecosystems. There prevails an argument that there is a difference between sustainable development and sustainability. For example, that sustainability refers to the environmental dimension of sustainable development, or that sustainability refers to the process, whereas sustainable development refers to the product and state. However, the two concepts entail the same dimensions and the same policy implications. Therefore, we use them interchangeably. Thus, sustainability is not a positive analytic concept, but a normative, ethically justified utopia describing a state of economy, society, and environmental considered optimal. Even though there is not yet any political or scientific agreement on a clear and universal definition of sustainable development, it remains remarkably persistent as an ideal political concept similar to democracy, justice, and liberty. Indeed, sustainable development is now like democracy. It is universally desired, diversely understood, extremely difficult to achieve, and won't go away. I divided my presentation in 4 items. This is the first one. The next is on a pathway to reach sustainability. Unquestionably, sustainable development still is an important concept, which was clearly illustrated at the United Nations Conference on Sustainable Development, 20 years after Rio. One of the conference main outcomes was the agreement by member states to set up sustainable development goals, which could be useful tools in achieving sustainable development. Thus, achieving sustainable development is still high on international and national agendas. 25 years after the concept was launched with publication of Our Common Future, commonly referred to as the Brundtland Report from the above 1987 World Commission. The next point. In 1999 was published a study conducted by the National Research Council's Board on Sustainable Development titled Our Common Journey, a Transition Towards Sustainability, which was an attempt to reinvigorate the strategic connections between scientific research, technological development, and society's efforts to achieve sustainable improvements in human well-being in 2-generation time. Because the pathway to sustainability cannot be charted in advance, it will have to be navigated through trial and error and conscious experimentation. The urgent need is to design strategies and institutions that can better integrate and complete knowledge with experimental action in programs of adaptive management and social learning. To address eventual tensions, 3 priority tasks emerged for advancing the research agenda for what may be called sustainability science. First, develop a research framework that integrates global and local perspectives to shape a place-based understanding of the interaction between environment and society. Second, initiate focused research programs on a small set of understudied questions that are central to a deeper understanding of interactions between society and the environment. And third, promote better utilization of existing tools and processes for linking knowledge to action in pursuit of a transition to sustainability. The understanding of the links between environment and development stems at that time from the Brundtland Report, Our Common Future. The idea of sustainable development was given additional impetus in 1992 United Nations Conference on the Environment. What happened is that extensive reviews of diverse concepts and definitions, 4 types of key differences emerge. What is to be sustained, what is to be developed, the types of links that should be held between entities to be sustained and the entities to be developed, and 4, the extent of future envisioning. I only refer to the extent of future envisioning, where it is widely thought that sustainable development is meaningful only if it is intergenerational. Over the space of a single generation, almost any development appears sustainable. Unfortunately, this contradicts what is the main approaches, namely the agenda for 2030 for the United Nations development goals. The next 2 points are an attempt to analyze what was how the sustainable development was conducted by countries and by multilateral environmental agreements. The first one in 2014, a study called Sustainable Development, Our Common Future Revisited, almost 25 years old. The concepts used was increasingly reflective social desirable attributes of social solutions to local and project level problems. An assessment method.
Peço desculpa de interromper, mas eu pedi para concluir, peço desculpa, porque temos só 10 minutos para perguntas já. Eu peço realmente lamento, mas pedia que... O chat já está aberto, devo dar a informação para todos que o chat já está aberto.
Let's go to the last point, sustainable science. It was not long since there were calls for a science that was adequate to address sustainability predicted and on recognition of the fundamental link between science and economy, while remaining free of political biases in an attempt to be responsive to the needs and values in society while preserving the life support system of planet Earth. What was firstly discussed was whether sustainable science was just a subtopic or other science or a cross-cutting question or a new discipline in its own right. I refer to a seminal paper published in 2011, authored by Sprangenberg. Sustainability science has developed from a new research field in a vibrant discipline in its own right. I will conclude. A final remark is that long-term sustainable development will be completely dependent upon the progress of science, namely the sustainable science, which is the major challenge the humanity faces. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Admiral. And I'll pass the moderation to Tomás Dentinho, in order to have the questions from Teresa, from the Azores, please. This looks like a revision.
Okay, well, good evening. Thank you very much for this very nice panel. I asked the audience here if there is any specific question to some of the panelists or to just in these general terms. I can ask a first question eventually to to someone that can answer quite well in a few minutes. My question is that, okay, in fact, you talk about everything nice, but really, if we compare the different presentations, all of them in terms of uses are conflictual in terms of so all these conflicts are not expressed there. And my question is, what is the tool we have in order to manage the conflicts that exist between all these uses? And if well, usually this UN thing also presents nice things, everything is there, but then when it comes to proximity, all these conflicts must be managed somehow. And of course, there are good news there. We heard from the minister, and if we noticed that the seas are improving and so on. But anyway, it seems that globally the regulation, from these presentations, it is all good news, and no, still not an idea about what is the regulation that eventually can globally, or at least at the European level, to solve the problems that can be solved with regulations at that level. That's my question. But I don't know if some of you have a general question for the students of the Cátedra. Please come here and put your question, and then we just have 9 minutes. A professora Assunção Cristas vai também fazer uma pergunta.
Thank you very much, all of you, for the very good presentations. And my question has to do with concepts. And in some presentations, we're talking about blue economy in the sense of sustainable economy of the sea. But in others, we're talking about blue economy in this broad way, which is the same as economy of the sea. Don't you think that if we want to be precise and if we want to measure precisely what is our growth in the correct way, that is in the sustainable way, we have to, first of all, to redefine these concepts and then to have relevant data in order to, both in the traditional areas and in the new areas, distinguish whether we're talking about a sustainable economy, which is a blue economy, or if we're only talking about economy of the sea as a whole. Thank you.
Thank you, Assunção. We have Reka, Peter, and Miguel still online. So please, who wants to answer the question of Assunção?
Well, I can start, Regina, if that is okay. And thank you for the excellent questions. While presenting an overview of the mission, I did highlight the 4 huge challenge areas, and the questionnaire has put it very well. There are many, many problems, and in the short presentation, I chose the approach that would say, while we recognize the enormity of the problems, we will not allow ourselves to be defeated by the scale of the challenge. We view the sea as not too big to fix. We view it as too big to fail and too big to ignore. If it is ignored and if it's allowed fail, we are threatening the absolute life on Earth. And I'm not talking about biodiversity. I'm talking about the selfish human interest first, right through biodiversity. So what we are seeking is an attention to the oceans that has never been given before in a European context. And while there are huge conflicts ranging from intersectoral to, as Miguel has pointed out, piracy and lawlessness on the high seas at a global level, we feel Europe is well positioned to provide a leadership and to take a bold step forward. And we are calling for transformational change in the governance, the political attention, the systems of governance, and that has to operate at all levels, at regional, national, European, and global. And everybody needs to be involved for that to be successful. It cannot be top down and it cannot be just bottom up. But we have to chart an entirely new course and one of great ambition. And on the question of the blue economy and the economy of the sea, I understand exactly the perception issue raised. Let's just say that in the vision espoused in the mission, we are talking about a circular, decarbonized, sustainable ocean economy. And for Europe, again, in areas like green shipping, in areas like massive renewable energy development, in areas of retrofitting ports and tourism to be carbon neutral. This is the scale of the ambition. And as said, without taking and being successful on the issue of sustainability, there is no success.
Thank you, Peter. We have a question by Sonia, which is a student of the Jean Monnet Share, who says that the question is the following. She says that the best way to get recognition is through education. Which in your opinion, are the best strategies in this field? Thank you. Maybe Natacha or Peter.
Well, I'm happy to offer an input there. Again, in the mission, we recognize that the involvement of the citizens of Europe at all levels, all generations is essential. And I absolutely agree with the Admiral's last point about the intergenerational requirement. Education, but also communication and engagement of citizens is essential. We cannot wait another generation or 2 generations for the benefits of education to come through. We need the leaders of today, tomorrow, and the generation after to move in the direction, real sustainability, real protection of the environment, and real circular economy. I should let others speak now.